I applaud you for writing a book that everyone can consume.
Well, it was interesting. Thank you, Chris. It was interesting when it came time to find a publisher or an agent. Uh, it was, there's not a lot of interest out there for first-time authors. It's just a struggle. And the one thing I got asked multiple times was, and they hadn't read the book at all, but the concept they didn't buy the concept. They didn't buy the concept of an unknown writing a memoir, I think. But they did ask me, we'd be interested in a how-to book. And I think
Mm,
there's a lot in publishing. I think that's a real popular
hmm
genre right now is
hmm
how do you make a trailer? How do you market? Give us the bullet points. And I do that to a degree in the book for sure. There's a whole chapter on my process of how to make a trailer step by step. But it's not the book I wanted to write. I really wanted to try to give people an idea of what it's like to work on a movie from the inside, what it's like, the pressure involved with opening a $200 million movie. Um, and how the pressure for a $2 million movie is almost just as great, even though the message you're sending out is different, of course.
Well, that's a great place to start. And Nick, if you're okay with it, I'd love for Jim to just hop in on that. Why is the pressure, and how is the pressure for a $200 million film the same as a $2 million film? And you alluded to this earlier, Jim. A lot of our viewers are making $2 million films. So walk
Mhm.
us through that.
Yeah. Um, well, my position for most of my career was akin to some guy, me, sitting on a fence. And on the one side, you have the studio, the people that financed the film, the people who are going to distribute and market the film. They're my colleagues, research, publicity, all forms of marketing disciplines. And there's my boss, the head of the studio, the head of marketing, and they pay my salary. So I work for them. On the other side of the fence is the filmmakers who are hired by the studio to make their film, to make in some cases, their dream project. Um, as you all know, it takes years and years and years to get to that point. And here they are, they've done it, they've created a film. And I'm the guy standing between these two factions that don't always see eye to eye. They don't always get along, they don't agree. The filmmakers, rightfully so, are passionate about what they've created. Their jobs on the line in the
Mm.
success of their film, whether it's the actors, the grip, the cinematographer, all the division heads, and of course the producers and the director. So there's pressure coming there. There's pressure coming from my guys, my bosses, and it's up to me to find a way to get the film open on Friday night, which is hence the name of my book, Opening Weekend. That's marketing's job, is to
Mm.
get the audience most predisposed to go, to actually leave the comfort of their couch and their refrigerator, to get away from Netflix for a minute. Although, certainly that's streaming is also a part of this story as well. But to get them out of the house and go across town and sit with a bunch of strangers who are coughing and hitting the back of their chair, and it's not as cheap as it used to be to do that. There's tons of options out there for your luxury dollar. Um, and so there's pressure there too. My studio, whether it's Warner Brothers or Castle Rock or A24 or whoever, whatever the studio that's banking on this film, they're banking on it succeeding. Their job is to, and this is cold, monetize the product.
Mhm.
Boy, is that cold, right? But that's something you hear in any kind of marketing conversation when you have a product, whether you're Apple selling iPhones or bottled water.
Yep.
It's the job of marketing to monetize the product. So here I sit on the fence, and my job is to create a campaign to get people to go, either to buy a movie subscription, a platform subscription, or buy a movie ticket. And finding compromise is usually one of the things we have to do. We have to kind of bury our own feelings and our own feelings about the product, the movie. That can never show.
But
Never.
Jim, is compromise the birth or the death of creativity?
Well, I think it's the death, but
But it's
nevertheless,
The
but it
honesty,
but
the
remember
honesty. I love it.
but
oh
remember,
yeah,
like you said, he's got two sides of the fence.
No
Okay,
hesitation.
right, and creativity is on one side,
Yeah,
and business is on the
is on
other.
the other. Yeah,
that's right.
show
That's
business.
right.
Yep,
It's show business. It's not show art. That
that's
famous
right.
line. But there's some excitement in that too. Is trying. I'm a pleaser. I think you got to be a pleaser in the job that I've had for 35 years. And I want to make everybody happy. Is that possible? No.
Hmm.
Can you try? You never stop trying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's other elements that come into the process, research being one, and we can talk about this later. One of the greatest complaints, for example, of trailers today is, what is it? What is it, Nick? Tell me. I'm going to quiz you. What's the biggest complaint you have about trailers today?
Oh, don't get him
Oh
started.
man, well, because I have one that is new, but I would say for me, there's actually two things, right? So one is they can give parts away of the movie that I'm just like, yo,
You bet.
right, that's too big of a piece for you to share, because now you
Absolutely.
spoiled it for me. Like that was really exciting reveal that you just revealed in the trailer, right? That was one. And I think the other one today for me is you're actually seeing a lot of trailers cut for films, and I feel like maybe there's too many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And those both of those are relatively new issues.
Yep.
Hmm.
What I thought you were going to say, and you kind of did say it, is they're too long. They tell me too much.
Yep.
And the reason for that has a lot to do with research.
Hmm.
That's my theory. Um, there's nothing you see that hasn't been tested and
Okay.
tested and tested, whether it's a TV commercial, a trailer, a digital ad, a billboard, a poster. They've been tested. Studios have to know what the consumer thinks before anything goes out to them. So, my students complain a lot about what you're complaining about. Same thing. It's very common. So, there's another issue that comes in, and actually, research could really help me as I sit on the fence between these two dogs nipping at my heels, working their way up. And, I could sometimes take research and say, here's what the consumer thinks. I know both sides of the fence care desperately about what's going to work,
Yeah.
because we all want the movie to open. That's the one common thing you can say. And so sometimes research, it's a double-edged sword. It solves some of my problems. It becomes the arbiter in this process. Yet, after the consumer looks at a trailer and says, you want me to spend $14 on a movie ticket and you didn't tell me enough.
Mm.
So you better tell me more. And that's why trailers are too long. That's why they tell too much. That's my theory. That's Jim's theory. So the original question was, where does the stress come from? I hope I'm starting to
Right.
Yeah.
where it is.
Illuminate the stress. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
careers are on the line. Lots of money is on the line. Credit matters. Credit, blame. There's a tremendous fear in Hollywood, and the fear has really infiltrated the studios and marketing in particular. The fear of failure. Um, it's still competitive as all get out. The
Yeah.
studios are going at each other every weekend. So lots of money going at it. There's a chapter in my book about a particular weekend where Warner Brothers opened The Perfect Storm against The Patriot. This was the year 2000, I believe.
Perfect Storm has Mark Wahlberg in it, right?
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg had a guy named, also a guy named George Clooney.
Yeah, there you go.
Neither were stars at the time, but this competition was really a pivot point, I think, in the business and certainly in my career, where it is the perfect example of the stress that you originally asked me about. This thing almost put me in the hospital.
Wow.
Because what happened was this was the biggest weekend of the year. It was a 5-day 4th of July week, the biggest movie-going week of 2000, and usually the biggest movie-going week of any year. And these are two huge movies, one coming from Warner Brothers, Perfect Storm, and Sony, Columbia, had The Patriot, with the biggest movie star in the world in it, a guy named Mel Gibson, opening a movie about the Revolutionary War on July 4th. So that was big competition for The Perfect Storm, based on a fairly popular book, true story. And spoiler alert, everyone, a story where everybody dies in the end.
Oh, yeah.
So there is lots of, we both had marketing challenges in both films, but the one thing that happened, neither studio was willing to move. So it created,
you mean move their release dates?
Their release date.
Got it. Okay.
So consequently, this was the press loved this. They were scratching their heads at the stupidity of two films basically cannibalizing one another on this incredible opportunity of 5 days in the summer where everybody's out of school, they're on vacation. It's a huge opportunity to score big at the box office.
Right, yeah.
And long story, I'll try to shorten the story up a little bit.
No, you're good. You're good.
The tracking came out. So tracking is research that kind of predicts how a film is performing in its marketing more than anything. The film hasn't opened yet, but there's questionnaires that goes out to the consumer. It's a survey, and you get a pretty good indication, and it's usually pretty accurate. It's based on political polling, so take that for what it's worth.
Who do they
you know
contract?
How accurate that is, right? So
who do they contract for that, Jim? Like to do that polling?
National Research Group is the company that instigated it about 50 years ago. A guy named Joe Farrell and Catherine Pura created this company, and they were pretty much a monopoly back then. Now there are other companies like Screen Engine and others that are in this business. And it's a good business because it's really the only scientific apparatus we have in marketing that gives us some kind of indication of if our message is working.
Got it.
So I cut a teaser for The Perfect Storm that just blew the socks off of everybody. I was so proud of it. I actually went to the theater to watch it play, and I live in Manhattan Beach, California, and I went, a mile from here to the ArcLight Theater in Manhattan Beach to just sit in the back of the theater and watch this teaser trailer play, which was full of action, and the sound was incredible. And we Nick, you would love this. We didn't tell too much at all. We only gave an indication of the excitement and the adventure. And I came out of that theater. I went to the lobby and I jumped up into the air and screamed. I was so happy that we had a hit. I knew we had a hit because I could see the reaction it got in my little theater, and I figured this is happening around the country. And man, I can't wait for this movie to open. So tracking usually starts 3 weeks before you open, and the tracking results came out, and guess what? The Patriot was kicking our asses.
Yeah.
We were just not appealing for some reason. Why? Tracking doesn't tell you that. But it was apparent that Mel Gibson's star power was working. And our message, based on tracking, wasn't working. So the next 3 weeks, I didn't go home, and that was stressful. And you're trying everything known to mankind to try to figure out a message for all demographics, because don't forget, these are two incredibly expensive films.
So they want to be 4-quadrant films, basically.
Absolutely. When you have a movie that costs $100 million, and this was 2000, so this would have been probably twice that today.
Right. Or more.
You know, you spend a lot of money to make a movie. You have to make a lot of money to make it back, to make a profit. So here you have these two massive studios. The press is all over that. Articles in the paper. This hardly ever happens. Nobody talks about marketing and things like that in the press. Well, they did about this one. And it just created incredible pressure on both studios, not just me, of course. You know, Sony was feeling it, but they had good tracking. So they were feeling very confident, and we weren't. And, you know, the director, Wolfgang Peterson, hired a producer's rep to be his watchdog to the Warner Brothers marketing department. So he was there to criticize what we were doing and to watch us and to demand that we leave no stone unturned. And by George, that's what happened. We spent an enormous amount of money cutting television commercials up until the minute this movie opened. So my back went out. I couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
I felt terrible and worn out and beat up. And the thing that really got me more than my back or anything else is I felt that I had earned a certain amount of trust from my studio and the filmmakers that was now gone. You know, I had had enough success in my job that I felt like, hey, come on, you know, have a little faith here. We got a teaser that worked. I saw it with my own eyes. You know, I've opened movies before. Come on, don't give up. But they, you know, of course, nobody cares about me or my back, nor should they.
Maybe they should.
They've got careers riding on this. They've got tons of money. They got shareholders, you know. So, you know, much bigger issues at stake here. And long story short, my back, you know, got better. I came back to work. I gave it the good old college try, and lo and behold, the movie opens, and we kicked their ass. We doubled their box office.
Wow.
Tracking was incorrect.
Wow.
Tracking had it wrong. That's a great point.
And I felt good, but I felt things are changing in marketing in Hollywood. I feel it.
It's this blind faith in the big data, big analytics.
Absolutely.
And your sense that the data has to be more correct than your artistic, creative intuition. The data just doesn't understand human beings.